My hands trembled as I held the black candle, its waxy surface cold against my palm, like a promise of death itself. The weight of betrayal is something you feel in your bones, and on that September evening in 2024, standing in my Wellington home, surrounded by birthday decorations I'd hung myself, I felt it crushing my chest like a vice. My name is Susan Blake. I'm 65 years old, and the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for had just handed me a funeral candle on my birthday, whispering words that would haunt most mothers to their graves. But I'm not most mothers. Let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began, because understanding the depth of someone's cruelty requires knowing the foundation of love that was broken first. I was born in 1959 to a working-class family in Lower Hutt. My father was a railway worker, my mother a seamstress. I learned early that nothing in life comes free, that every dream requires sacrifice, every success demands blood, sweat, and tears. When I married Robert Blake at 23, I thought I'd found my forever. We had Olivia 2 years later, and she became the sun around which my entire universe orbited. Robert died when Olivia was only 8. A heart attack at 41, sudden and merciless. The insurance barely covered the funeral costs. I was left with $847 in our joint account, a mortgage of $156,000, and a daughter who cried herself to sleep every night calling for her daddy. I could have crumbled. Instead, I became steel. I worked 3 jobs: morning shift at a bakery, afternoons at a law office as a receptionist, and evenings cleaning corporate buildings. I slept 4 hours a night for years. My hands became rough, my back chronically ached, and I watched my youth fade in fluorescent-lit bathroom mirrors during midnight cleaning shifts. But Olivia never went without. She had piano lessons, dance classes, the latest school supplies, and birthday parties that made other children envious. By the time she turned 18, I'd saved $43,000 for her university education. Every dollar represented a meal I'd skipped, a pair of shoes I'd resoled instead of replaced, a holiday I'd never taken. She attended Victoria University, graduated with honors in business management, and I was there in the audience, crying tears of pride, wearing the same dress I'd worn to her high school graduation because I couldn't afford a new one. Olivia married Marcus when she was 27, a charming man from a wealthy Auckland family who worked in finance. I contributed $25,000 toward their wedding, money I'd been saving for my retirement. They had a daughter, Emily, my precious granddaughter, now 3 years old. I adored that child, babysat twice a week without complaint, and showered her with love. But something changed in Olivia after her marriage. Marcus's family had money, real money, and slowly, insidiously, my daughter began to look at me differently. I was no longer the mother who'd moved mountains for her. I was the embarrassment, the woman with calloused hands and discount store clothes, the reminder that she came from humble beginnings. The invitations to family gatherings became less frequent. When I did attend, Marcus's mother, Patricia, would make subtle comments about my outdated handbag or my quaint little rental house. Olivia would laugh along, and each laugh was a knife to my heart. Now, standing in my modest living room with its secondhand furniture and faded wallpaper, looking at the black candle my daughter had just given me for my 65th birthday, I felt something shift inside me. Around me, the small gathering of neighbors I'd invited, because my own daughter had said she could only stop by for a minute, fell silent, sensing the horror of what had just transpired. "It's what you deserve," Olivia had whispered, her eyes cold as winter rain. "I'll light it on the day of your funeral." The room spun. Someone gasped, but I steadied myself, looked into my daughter's beautiful, cruel face, and smiled. "Dear," I said calmly, my voice betraying none of the earthquake inside me, "open the envelope I left in your car." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows furrowed with confusion and annoyance. "What envelope?" "Mother, I don't have time for your drama. Marcus and Emily are waiting in the car." "Just open it," I repeated softly. She huffed, turned on her expensive heels, and marched out. I stood there, the black candle still in my hands, and waited. The neighbors whispered among themselves, uncertain whether to comfort me or leave. Then from outside, I heard it, a scream that split the evening air like lightning. If you're watching this story unfold, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. These stories of resilience need to be heard. And please leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing this community spans the globe. The scream came again, followed by the sound of car doors slamming and hurried footsteps on the gravel driveway. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I forced myself to remain still, to keep breathing steadily. Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor of 15 years, touched my arm gently. "Susan, dear, what's happening?" she asked, her weathered face creased with concern. Before I could answer, Olivia burst back through the door, her designer coat askew, her perfectly styled blonde hair disheveled. Her face had gone chalk white, and in her trembling hands she clutched the manila envelope I'd placed in her BMW that morning. Behind her, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "What is this?" Olivia's voice cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks, smearing her expensive makeup. "Mother, what have you done?" I set the black candle down on the coffee table, that damned symbol of her hatred, and looked at my daughter with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. "I did what any mother would do, darling. I protected myself." "Protected yourself?" Marcus stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "You've destroyed us. Do you understand what you've done, you spiteful old woman?" The insult should have stung, but I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. Every sleepless night, every carefully documented detail, every secret meeting with my lawyer. It had all been leading here. "Sit down, Olivia," I said quietly. "Both of you. We need to talk." "I'm not sitting anywhere," Olivia shrieked, waving the envelope. "These documents. You can't do this. That property is in my name. You signed it over to me 2 years ago." "I did," I acknowledged, nodding slowly. "The property at 47 Thorndon Key, valued at $890,000. I signed it over to you in 2022 when you said you needed it for investment purposes. I believed you. I trusted you." My voice broke slightly on that last word, but I pushed forward. "You told me you'd let me live in the small cottage on the back of the property for the rest of my life. You promised, Olivia. You looked me in the eyes, called me your best mum in the world, and promised. And you can still live there," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Really?" I pulled out my phone, my arthritic fingers fumbling slightly with the screen. "Then explain this email I found 6 weeks ago. The one you accidentally sent to me instead of Patricia." I began to read aloud, my voice steady despite the pain each word caused. "The old cottage brings down the property value. Once mother is in a care home, and let's be honest, how much longer can she manage alone? We'll demolish it and develop the entire lot. Marcus's architect estimates we can build 3 townhouses worth $1.2 million each. Finally, we'll see returns on all those years of pretending to care." The room went deathly silent. Even Marcus had the decency to look away. "Pretending to care," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like poison. 32 years of my life, and it was all a burden to you." Olivia's legs seemed to give out, and she sank onto my worn sofa, still clutching the envelope. "Mother, that email was written in anger. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I interrupted. "Just like you meant it when you gave me that black candle tonight. Just like you meant it when you told Patricia last month that you wished I'd just go quietly, so you wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment of having a mother who still works part-time at a bakery at 65. Mrs. Patterson gasped behind me. The other neighbors shifted uncomfortably. "How do you know about that?" Olivia whispered. "Patricia felt guilty," I said simply. "She called me 3 weeks ago and told me everything. How you and Marcus have been planning to put me in the cheapest care facility you could find. How you've been telling everyone I'm becoming senile to justify it. How you've been positioning yourselves to take control of not just the property, but the $67,000 remaining in the savings account your father left for me." Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and threatening. "That property is legally Olivia's. Whatever you have in that envelope doesn't change that." I smiled then, a sad, knowing smile. "You're right, Marcus. The property is legally hers. But what you both failed to realize is that I'm not the ignorant, simple woman you think I am. When I signed over that property, I made sure my lawyer included a very specific clause. A life estate. I have the legal right to live in that cottage until my death, and any attempt to remove me, demolish the cottage, or otherwise violate that agreement results in the property reverting back to me." Olivia's face went from white to green. "But the lawyer said—" "Your lawyer didn't read the fine print," I finished. "Or perhaps he did, and you simply didn't ask the right questions. You were so eager to get your hands on that asset that you didn't bother to verify the terms. There's more, I continued, my voice gaining strength. The documents in that envelope detail everything. Every email you've sent planning my disposal. Every conversation Patricia recorded. Yes, she's been recording you for weeks with my knowledge. Every lie you've told to Marcus's family about my mental state. It's all there, documented and dated. I paused, letting this sink in. The envelope also contains my new will. The property will never be yours now, Olivia. Upon my death, it goes to a housing charity that helps single mothers, women like I was when your father died, women who sacrifice everything for their children. Olivia's sobs filled the room, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache where my love for her used to live. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Both of you. The following morning arrived with Wellington's typical gray drizzle, rain streaking down my kitchen window like tears I'd finally run out of the night before. I sat at my small wooden table, the same one where Olivia had done her homework as a child, staring at a cup of tea gone cold, the black candle still sitting where I'd left it on the coffee table in the next room. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia's face twisted in anguish, heard her sobs echoing through my modest home. The phone had been ringing since 6 in the morning. First Marcus's mother, Patricia, her voice dripping with venom, calling me ungrateful and manipulative. Then Olivia's friends, people I'd watched grow up alongside my daughter, now calling me cruel and vindictive. I'd stopped answering after the 5th call. There was a firm knock at my door at 9 o'clock. Through the frosted glass, I could see the outline of someone tall. My stomach tightened. When I opened it, I found Marcus standing there alone, looking haggard in a rumpled business suit. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual confident posture had crumbled into something resembling defeat. "Susan," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, I need to talk to you. Olivia she's not well. She's been crying all night. She won't eat, won't speak to anyone. Emily keeps asking what's wrong with Mommy." The mention of my granddaughter sent a sharp pain through my chest. "Emily," I whispered. "How is she?" Confused, scared. Marcus ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Look, I know what we did was wrong. I know how this looks. But please, can we come in and discuss this like adults? There has to be a way to fix this." Something in his demeanor seemed genuine. Or perhaps I was just a foolish old woman who wanted to believe that some part of my family still cared. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him enter. Marcus stood awkwardly in my living room, his expensive shoes looking out of place on my worn carpet. His eyes fell on the black candle and he flinched. That was, God, Susan, that was unforgivable. I don't know what possessed her to do that. Don't you? I asked, settling into my armchair. Or have you been encouraging this behavior? He had the grace to look ashamed. My mother, Patricia, she's always been status conscious. When I married Olivia, Mother made comments about her common background. I should have defended your daughter better. I should have defended you. But you didn't, I stated simply. No, he admitted, sinking onto the sofa. I didn't. And over time, I watched as Olivia absorbed those attitudes. She started to see you through my family's eyes instead of her own. And I encouraged it because it made my life easier. I'm ashamed of that. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but saw only genuine remorse. The property, Marcus, the emails about the care home, that wasn't just status consciousness. That was calculated cruelty. I know. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It started small. My mother suggested that having you in a newer place, somewhere with proper facilities, would be better for you. She made it sound like we'd be doing you a favor. Then it became about the financial opportunity, the property value, the development potential. He looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. Somewhere along the way, we forgot you were a person. We started seeing you as an obstacle. And that email Olivia sent, Susan, I wrote half of those words. She was parroting my cruelty, my greed. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because my wife is upstairs in our bedroom, holding that envelope, reading through years of documented betrayal, and she's realizing what she's become. She called me 3 hours ago from Emily's room, where she'd been sitting watching our daughter sleep, and she said, 'Marcus, I've turned into your mother. I've turned into everything I hated growing up. My mother wore herself to the bone for me, and I thanked her with a funeral candle.' Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "She's talking about hurting herself, Susan. She keeps saying she doesn't deserve to live, that she's a monster. I'm terrified. I know we don't deserve your forgiveness. I know we've burned every bridge. But I'm begging you, not for me, not even for Olivia, but for Emily. Please, help me bring her back from this edge." My heart, already so battered, cracked a little more. Because despite everything, despite the cruelty and the betrayal, Olivia was still my daughter. The little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the garden, calling them sunshine flowers. The teenager who'd held my hand at her father's funeral and whispered, "We'll be okay, Mom. We have each other." "Where is she now?" I asked. "In the car. She refused to come in. She says she can't face you after what she's done." I stood up slowly, my joints protesting. "Then, I'll go to her." The rain had intensified into a proper Wellington downpour as I walked toward Marcus's black BMW parked in my driveway. Through the water-streaked windows, I could see Olivia in the passenger seat, her head bowed, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Emily was in the back, secured in her car seat, playing quietly with a stuffed rabbit, blissfully unaware of the adult catastrophe unfolding around her. I tapped on the window. Olivia's head shot up, her eyes widening with something between hope and terror. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying, all traces of her usual polished beauty stripped away. She looked, in that moment, exactly like she had at 8 years old when her father died, lost, broken, and desperately in need of her mother. She opened the door slowly, stepping out into the rain. We stood there, separated by 3 feet of wet gravel and a chasm of hurt that seemed impossible to cross. "Mom," she choked out, and that single word, that name I thought I'd never hear again with love behind it, nearly undid me. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I wanted to hold her. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to pull her into my arms and tell her everything would be all right. But I couldn't. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. "Why, Olivia?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why did you hate me so much?" "I didn't hate you," she cried, rain and tears mingling on her face. "I never hated you. I hated myself. Every time I looked at you, I saw everything you'd sacrificed. Your youth, your health, your happiness. You gave it all up for me. And what did I give you in return? A life of struggle. You deserved so much better than what you got." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "When I married Marcus, when I stepped into his world of country clubs and investment portfolios and people who've never worried about making rent, I felt like a fraud, like everyone could see I didn't belong. Patricia would make these comments about proper lineage and old money, and I felt so ashamed of where I came from." "Ashamed of me," I said quietly. "Yes," she admitted, the word barely audible over the rain. "God help me, yes." And the more ashamed I felt, the angrier I became. Angry at you for reminding me of everything I was trying to escape. Angry at myself for being so weak. I convinced myself that you were holding me back, that your presence in my life was a burden. She took a shuddering breath. "The property. Marcus and I were drowning in debt. His investments went bad last year. We lost $340,000 in the market crash. We've been living on credit cards, keeping up appearances while everything crumbled behind the facade. When I asked you to sign over the property, I told myself it was business, just business." My mind reeled. "You said you needed it for investment purposes. You said you were doing well." "We lied," she whispered. "We've been lying about everything. The new car, leased, the renovations on our house, paid for with a second mortgage we can't afford. Emily's expensive preschool. We're 3 months behind on payments. We thought if we could develop your property, we could fix everything. We could maintain the illusion." She laughed bitterly. "And in my twisted logic, I convinced myself you'd be better off in a care home anyway. You're 65, you still work that bakery job that hurts your back. You live in this tiny rental. I told myself I was planning for your future, being responsible. But last night, holding that envelope, reading my own words back to me, pretending to care, I realized the truth." "What truth?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. "That I'd become a monster," she said, her voice hollow. "That in trying to escape being poor, I'd lost everything that made me human. I gave you a black funeral candle on your 65th birthday, Mom. What kind of person does that? What kind of daughter looks at the woman who sacrificed everything and wishes her dead? She fell to her knees in the wet gravel, her expensive coat ruined, her hands pressed against the ground. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I've done, what I've become, and I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry. I stood there, looking down at my broken daughter, and felt my resolve crumbling. But I also felt something else, a cold, hard kernel of self-preservation that had been forged over 6 months of discovering her betrayal. Get up, I said firmly. Get up and get in the car out of the rain. Emily is watching. Olivia stumbled to her feet, glancing back at the car where Emily was indeed pressed against the window, her small face concerned. We climbed into my house, Marcus following behind us. I made tea, because that's what mothers do, even when their hearts are breaking, and we sat around my small kitchen table. I need to understand something, I said, wrapping my cold hands around my mug. The black candle. Explain that to me, because I genuinely don't understand how you got from point A to point B. Olivia stared into her tea. It was Patricia's idea, she said finally. Your birthday was coming up, and I mentioned I didn't know what to get you. She said, why get her anything? She's just going to die soon anyway and leave you with nothing but debt and obligation. My hands tightened on the mug. I should have defended you, Olivia continued. Instead, I laughed. We were at their house for dinner, and I laughed like it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. Then Patricia said, you should give her a funeral candle. Let her know what you really think of her constant need for attention. And you thought that was appropriate? My voice was ice. I was drunk, she said weakly. We'd had wine, and I was angry about the insurance premium on the property, and Patricia kept pushing, and suddenly it seemed like a brilliant idea, a way to finally tell you how suffocated I felt by your expectations, your sacrifices, your constant reminder of everything I should be grateful for. She looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. But the moment I saw your face last night, the moment those words left my mouth, I knew. I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I'd destroyed the one person who'd loved me unconditionally, and there was no going back. The three of us sat in heavy silence, the kitchen clock ticking like a countdown to something inevitable. Rain continued to hammer against the windows, creating a cocoon of sound that felt both protective and suffocating. I studied Olivia's face, really studied it, and saw not just my daughter, but generations of women who'd struggled, compromised, and lost themselves in the process. There's more to this story, I said finally, setting down my tea. Things you don't know. Things I need to tell you before we go any further. Olivia looked up, confusion and apprehension mixing in her expression. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. That property at 47 Thorndon Quay? It wasn't just an asset I casually handed over. It was your father's legacy, Olivia. When Robert died, the life insurance I told you barely covered the funeral? That was a lie. Her eyes widened. What? There was $200,000 in life insurance, I continued, each word carefully measured. I told you there was almost nothing because I didn't want you to feel guilty about the sacrifices I was making. I wanted you to believe I was working 3 jobs purely out of necessity, not choice. But the truth is, I invested that insurance money in property. Marcus leaned forward. You invested it? When? In 1995, when property in Wellington was still affordable. I bought that Thorndon Quay property for $180,000, a dilapidated house on a large lot that everyone said was a terrible investment. I spent the remaining $20,000 fixing up the cottage on the back of the property, and I rented out both buildings for years. Olivia's mouth had fallen open. You owned that property all along? But you always said we had nothing, that we were barely surviving. We were surviving on my wages, I clarified. The rental income, about $2,400 a month at its peak, went into a separate account, an account I never touched, an account that was meant for you. I stood up and went to my bedroom, returning with a worn leather folder I'd kept hidden in my closet. I placed it on the table and opened it, revealing bank statements, investment records, and property documents dating back 29 years. By the time you turned 18, that rental income, carefully invested, had grown to $158,000. That's what paid for your university education, your car, your wedding. Not my 3 jobs. Those kept us fed and clothed. The rental income built your future. Tears were streaming down Olivia's face again. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to understand the value of work. of sacrifice. I didn't want you to take money for granted the way so many privileged children do. And perhaps, I paused, swallowing hard, perhaps I wanted you to believe I was stronger than I was, that I could do the impossible through sheer will alone. Marcus spoke up, his voice thoughtful. When did you sign the property over to Olivia? 2 years ago, as she said. But here's what she doesn't know. I pulled out another document. 6 months before I signed it over, I took out a reverse mortgage on the property for $200,000. Olivia gasped. You did what? I took out a reverse mortgage, I repeated calmly. The money went into a trust that can only be accessed under specific conditions outlined by my lawyer. The property may legally be yours, Olivia, but it comes with a debt of $200,000 plus interest that becomes due upon my death or if the property is sold. Marcus's face had gone pale. So the property isn't worth $890,000 clear. It's worth $890,000 minus $200,000 plus accumulating interest. Effectively, about $640,000 after the debt. Exactly, I confirmed. And that trust? It's earmarked for Emily's education and future. Not yours, Olivia. Not Marcus's. Your daughter's. Because despite everything, despite your cruelty and your betrayal, I will not let my granddaughter suffer for your mistakes. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia stared at the documents spread across the table as if they were written in a foreign language. Finally, she whispered, You've been protecting me and manipulating me at the same time. Not manipulating, I corrected. Teaching, though I admit the lesson was harsher than I ever intended it to be. Why tell us this now? Marcus asked. You could have let us continue thinking the property was worth more than it is. Because you need to understand something crucial, I said, leaning forward. I didn't become a victim last night. I've been preparing for this possibility for months, ever since Patricia first called me to confess what you two were planning. Every move I've made has been calculated. Every document in that envelope was carefully selected to achieve a specific outcome. What outcome? Olivia whispered. Truth, I said simply. I wanted you to see yourself clearly, without the filters of Patricia's influence or Marcus's family's expectations. I wanted you to hit rock bottom so you could decide who you really are. The daughter who gives her mother a funeral candle? Or the girl who once brought me sunshine flowers and promised we'd face the world together? Olivia buried her face in her hands. I don't know who I am anymore. Then it's time to figure it out, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Because Emily is watching. She's learning from you what it means to be a woman, a daughter, a mother. What legacy do you want to leave her? Patricia's cold calculations or something better? Marcus reached over and took Olivia's hand. For the first time, I saw something genuine pass between them, a moment of shared recognition that they'd been living a lie. Susan, Marcus said carefully, we owe you more than an apology. We owe you restitution. I don't know how we'll do it, but we need to make this right. You can start, I said, pulling out one more document from my folder. By reading this. It was a business proposal, typed and formatted professionally. Olivia took it with shaking hands and began to read aloud. Proposal for Development Partnership, Blake Henderson Property Trust. Purpose, to develop the Thorndon Key property into affordable housing units for single mothers with profits split between operational costs, Emily's Education Trust, and a foundation in Robert Blake's name for widows and single parents. She looked up at me, stunned. You want to develop the property together? I want to give you a chance to be part of something meaningful, I said. To turn this nightmare into something positive. But it comes with conditions. The rain had softened to a gentle patter as I laid out the conditions that would determine whether our family could ever heal or would remain fractured forever. Olivia and Marcus sat across from me, the business proposal between us like a bridge over troubled water. Fragile, uncertain, but there. First condition, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Family therapy. All of us. You, Marcus, me, and eventually Emily when she's old enough to understand. We go weekly for at least 6 months. No excuses, no cancellations. Olivia nodded immediately. Yes, absolutely. Second condition, Patricia is cut off from our family decisions. I don't care if she's Marcus's mother. She's been poisoned, and until she can demonstrate genuine change, she doesn't get a voice in our lives. Marcus flinched, but didn't argue. Agreed. I should have set those boundaries years ago. Third condition, I continued, and this one was the hardest. You both undergo financial counseling. I want complete transparency about your debts, your spending, everything. Because this proposal, I tapped the document, requires honesty and fiscal responsibility. If we're going to build something together, I need to know you can be trusted with money. How much do you actually owe? I asked bluntly. Marcus cleared his throat. Total debts, $487,000. That includes the bad investments, credit cards, the second mortgage, and some personal loans from my family that Patricia has been holding over our heads. I felt the blood drain from my face. Nearly $500,000. And your income? I make $145,000 a year, Marcus admitted. Olivia hasn't worked since Emily was born. We've been living on credit, maintaining an appearance we couldn't afford, trying to keep up with my family's expectations. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I whispered, using my mother's old expression. You're drowning. We know, Olivia said, her voice small. That's why the property development seemed like our only way out. If we could build those townhouses Marcus's architect proposed, sell them for $1.2 million each, we could clear our debts and finally breathe. I looked at the two of them, these foolish, desperate people who'd let pride and fear drive them to cruelty. The development I'm proposing won't make you rich, I said carefully. It's designed to be sustainable, not profitable in the way you're imagining, but it will give you purpose, and if managed correctly, it will provide steady income. I pulled out my calculator and a notepad. The property is zoned for medium-density residential. Rather than 3 luxury townhouses, we can build 6 modular, affordable units. Total construction costs, approximately $1.8 million. We secure financing through government affordable housing grants and a construction loan. We can't get a loan with our debt, Marcus said flatly. But the trust can, I countered. That $200,000 from the reverse mortgage, I haven't touched it. It's been sitting in a high-interest account for 2 years, growing. It's now worth $218,000. That becomes our down payment. The trust applies for the loan, not you personally. Olivia's eyes widened. The money has been there all along? All along, I confirmed, waiting for the right moment. This project will take approximately 18 months from approval to completion. During that time, you'll need to get your financial house in order. Sell the leased car. Downsize your home. Cut every unnecessary expense. Marcus, you might need to take a second job or find ways to increase your income. I'll do whatever it takes, he said firmly. Once the units are complete, we rent them at affordable rates to single mothers, verified through a partnership with local social services. The rental income, after expenses and loan payments, gets split 3 ways. 30% to operational costs and maintenance, 30% to Emily's trust, and 40% to paying down your debts. I ran the numbers on my calculator. At projected rents of $450 per week per unit, we're looking at roughly $140,000 annual income. After expenses and loan payments, approximately $45,000 available for distribution. Your share for debt payment would be $18,000 per year. Marcus did his own calculation. At that rate, it would take us over 25 years to clear our debts. Yes, I said simply. 25 years of living modestly, working hard, and rebuilding your integrity. Or you can choose bankruptcy, lose everything including your pride, and still not be free of Patricia's influence. The weight of reality settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Olivia spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. What about the life estate you mentioned? Your right to live in the cottage? I maintain my life estate, I said firmly. That's non-negotiable. The cottage stays, and I live there rent-free for the rest of my life. The 6 new units get built on the remaining land. And before you ask, yes, I've had architects look at the site. It's feasible. 4th condition, I continued. I manage the trust and the development project. You two are involved. You make decisions with me, but I have veto power. This isn't about control. It's about ensuring the project's original mission stays intact. What's the 5th condition? Olivia asked. I took a deep breath. The 5th condition is the hardest because it's not something I can measure or enforce legally. I need you to prove to me that you've changed, not with words, but with actions. Consistent, daily actions that show you understand the value of family over status, substance over appearance, integrity over convenience. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks again. How long do I have to prove that? As long as it takes, I answered honestly. Maybe a year, maybe 10, maybe the rest of my life. But here's what I can tell you. I want to believe in you again. I want to look at you and see my daughter, not the woman who wished me dead. I want Emily to have a grandmother who's welcome in her life, and a mother who shows her what real strength looks like. Marcus reached across the table, his hand palm up. Susan, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Help us, please. Not for Olivia and me, we deserve whatever consequences come our way, but for Emily, help us become the parent she deserves. I looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then at Olivia's tear-stained face, and finally at the documents spread across my kitchen table, the evidence of betrayal and the blueprint for redemption sitting side by side. There's something else you need to know, I said quietly. The black candle. I'm keeping it. Olivia's head snapped up. What? Why? Because I'm going to put it on my mantle, I explained, where I can see it every day. It's going to remind me that love without boundaries is enabling, that sacrifice without wisdom is martyrdom, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone face the consequences of their actions. I stood up and walked to the living room, picking up the cursed black candle. I brought it back to the kitchen and set it in the center of the table. But I'm also keeping it, I said, because one day, maybe years from now, when you've proven yourself, when you've built something meaningful with your life, when Emily is old enough to understand this story, I'm going to give this candle back to you, and you're going to light it. Why? Olivia whispered, looking horrified. Because you're going to light it at my funeral, I said simply, not as a symbol of hatred, but as a symbol of transformation, of how something dark and cruel became a catalyst for change. And you're going to tell Emily about the day her mother hit rock bottom and chose to climb back up. The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, Olivia reached across the table and took my hand. 3 days after that agonizing kitchen table confrontation, I sat in the modest office of Margaret Chen, the lawyer who'd been helping me navigate this family catastrophe for the past 6 months. Margaret was 72, sharp as a tack, and had a reputation for protecting clients that less scrupulous lawyers might dismiss as difficult old women. She'd been recommended to me by Mrs. Patterson after I'd accidentally discovered that first damning email. Susan, Margaret said, adjusting her reading glasses as she reviewed the documents I'd brought, I need to tell you something important, something I've been investigating since you first came to me. My stomach tightened. What is it? Patricia Henderson, Marcus's mother, has been systematically manipulating your family situation for her own benefit, and it goes deeper than you know. She opened a folder and spread out several documents, bank statements, property records, and what appeared to be legal contracts. Do you know that Patricia owns a development company, Henderson Properties Limited? I shook my head, feeling cold dread creeping up my spine. She's been developing properties around Wellington for 15 years, small scale, mostly residential. And according to my research, she's been pressuring Marcus and Olivia about your Thorndon Key property for over 3 years, long before they came to you asking you to sign it over. Margaret pointed to an email exchange she'd obtained through legal channels. Look at this. 2.5 years ago, Patricia sent Marcus a business proposal. She wanted him to convince you to sell the property to Henderson Properties for $650,000, well below market value even then. When you refused, she pivoted to Plan B, convince you to sign the property over to Olivia, then pressure Olivia to demolish the cottage and partner with Henderson Properties on the development. My God, I whispered. Marcus said they lost $340,000 in bad investments. Was that Patricia too? Margaret nodded grimly. Patricia convinced Marcus to invest in a property development in Lower Hutt. She needed additional investors to secure financing. Marcus put in $340,000, money he and Olivia had saved, plus money they borrowed against their house. The development failed, deliberately in my opinion, and Patricia's company absorbed the assets at a fraction of their value. That's fraud, I said, my voice shaking with anger. It's very difficult to prove, Margaret cautioned. Patricia is careful. She uses legal loopholes, personal relationships, and emotional manipulation. She's bankrupted her own son and daughter-in-law while positioning herself to profit from your property. I felt like I was falling down a rabbit hole. Does Marcus know? I don't think he does. Not fully. He sees his mother as difficult and status-conscious, but I don't believe he understands the extent of her financial manipulation. Olivia certainly doesn't. Margaret pulled out another document. This is where it gets interesting. That reverse mortgage you took out for $200,000? Patricia has been making inquiries about it. She's been trying to buy the debt from the lending institution. My heart nearly stopped. She can do that? Technically, yes. If the lender agrees to sell the debt, Patricia could purchase it and become your creditor. Then she could accelerate the repayment terms, force a sale of the property, and acquire it at a discount when you can't pay. But the property isn't mine anymore, I protested. It's Olivia's. With your life estate, Margaret reminded me, which complicates things beautifully. Patricia can't force you out while you're alive, but she can make life very difficult. The question is, why haven't you told Olivia and Marcus about Patricia's company and her schemes? I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because I needed to know if Olivia's cruelty came from her own heart or from Patricia's influence. If I'd told her immediately, she could have blamed everything on her mother-in-law and avoided taking responsibility for her own choices. And now? Margaret asked. Now I need to tell them, but strategically. I paused, an idea forming. Margaret, that affordable housing development I proposed, could we structure it in a way that completely blocks Patricia from any involvement? A slow smile spread across Margaret's face. I thought you'd never ask. I've been drafting exactly that. The Blake Henderson Property Trust, terrible name by the way, we should change it, can be structured with bylaws that specifically prohibit family members of trustees from bidding on contracts or participating in development. Change it to the Robert Blake Memorial Trust, I said. After my husband, after Emily's grandfather who died too young. Perfect, Margaret made a note. Now here's my advice. Bring Olivia and Marcus in here. Show them everything about Patricia. Let them see the full extent of how they've been manipulated. Then give them a choice. What choice? Whether to confront Patricia legally or personally. Whether to cut her off completely or try to salvage some relationship. Because, Susan, if you move forward with this development project, Patricia will fight you. She'll file objections with the council. She'll pressure Marcus through family loyalty. She'll make your life hell. Let her try, I said, feeling a steel resolve settling into my bones. I've survived worse than Patricia Henderson. 2 days later, Olivia and Marcus sat in Margaret's office, their faces growing progressively paler as she walked them through Patricia's schemes. The evidence was irrefutable. Emails, financial records, testimony from other families Patricia had manipulated over the years. My mother bankrupted us on purpose, Marcus whispered, his voice hollow. She destroyed our finances so we'd be desperate enough to pressure Susan? Not just that, Margaret said gently. She's been positioning herself to acquire the Thorndon Key property at a discount for years. You and Olivia were never partners in her mind. You were tools. Olivia looked like she might be sick. All those comments about Susan being a burden, about putting her in a care home, about the property being wasted on an old woman, that was Patricia planting seeds. Yes, I confirmed. But here's the important question, Olivia. Whose hands held the black candle? Whose mouth spoke those cruel words to me? Patricia may have planted the seeds, but you watered them. You let them grow. It was harsh, but necessary. Olivia needed to understand that discovering Patricia's manipulation didn't absolve her of responsibility. Marcus turned to me, his jaw set with new determination. What do we do? How do we stop her? We build something she can't touch, I said simply. We create the Robert Blake Memorial Trust, develop the property exactly as planned, and we write bylaws that exclude her completely. We also, I paused, looking at Marcus seriously. We cut her off financially and personally until she seeks help for whatever drives this need to control and destroy. She's my mother, Marcus said, but there was no conviction in his voice. And Emily is your daughter, I countered. Which relationship matters more? The answer showed in his eyes before he spoke it aloud. The next 6 months unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance between hope and heartbreak. True to their word, Olivia and Marcus began attending family therapy every Tuesday evening. Dr. Sarah Williams, a no-nonsense counselor in her 50s, didn't allow anyone to hide behind excuses or blame. In our third session, she'd look directly at Olivia and said, "You keep talking about Patricia's influence, about Marcus's family, about financial pressure, but Susan asked you a question in our first meeting that you still haven't answered. Why did you hate your mother?" Olivia had squirmed in her seat, looking everywhere but at me. "I told you, I didn't hate her." "Stop," Dr. Williams interrupted. The black candle wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was the culmination of years of resentment. So I'll ask again, why? The silence stretched for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, Olivia whispered, "Because she made me feel guilty for existing. I felt like I'd been slapped. What? Every sacrifice you made, Mum, you wore like a badge of honor. The 3 jobs, the cheap clothes, the skipped meals. You never let me forget what you'd given up for me. And I loved you for it, but I also resented you for it. Because how could I ever be enough to justify that much sacrifice? How could I ever be worthy of that much suffering? Tears were streaming down both our faces now. So, I pushed you away, Olivia continued. I married into money because I thought maybe if I achieved enough, earned enough, had enough, I could finally balance the scales. I could finally stop feeling guilty for ruining your life. You didn't ruin my life, I said, my voice breaking. You were the only thing that made it worth living after your father died. But you never said that, Olivia sobbed. You only ever talked about the sacrifices, the struggles, the hardship. I thought I was your burden, not your joy. Dr. Williams leaned forward. Susan, did you hear what your daughter just said? I nodded, unable to speak, understanding for the first time how my martyrdom had poisoned our relationship as surely as Patricia's manipulation had. The black candle, Doctor, Williams said quietly, was Olivia's way of saying, if I'm the cause of your death in life, then let's make it official. It was cruel, but it was also honest. Brutally, terribly honest. That session broke something open between us. We started talking, really talking, for the first time in years. I told Olivia about the joy she'd brought me, about the moments of pride and love that had sustained me through the hardest times. She told me about the crushing weight of expectation, about feeling like she could never be good enough to justify my sacrifices. Meanwhile, Marcus took a second job doing financial consulting on weekends. They sold their leased BMW and bought a reliable 10-year-old Toyota for $8,500. They put their house on the market and moved into a modest rental apartment, cutting their housing costs by 60%. Olivia got a part-time job as a bookkeeper for a local business, working while Emily was in preschool. The lifestyle change was dramatic. No more expensive dinners, designer clothes, or country club memberships. Marcus's family was scandalized. Patricia, in particular, unleashed a campaign of guilt and shame, calling Marcus daily to berate him for humiliating the family. The breaking point came 4 months into their financial recovery. Patricia showed up at their apartment unannounced, took one look at their modest living situation, and said in front of Emily, "What kind of father raises his daughter in poverty? You're an embarrassment, Marcus. A complete failure." Marcus, who'd been taking Emily's coat off, stopped. He very carefully hung the coat on its hook, walked over to his mother, and said quietly, "Get out. You're not welcome here anymore." "Excuse me?" Patricia's face flushed with anger. "You heard me. Get out. And don't come back until you can apologize to Susan, to Olivia, and to me for the financial manipulation, the emotional abuse, and the systematic destruction of this family's relationships. We're done enabling you." Patricia sputtered, threatened, and finally stormed out. Marcus stood at the closed door, shaking, and then turned to find Olivia and Emily staring at him. "Daddy?" Emily asked in her small voice. "Why is Grandma Patricia so mad?" Marcus knelt down to his daughter's level. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people we love make bad choices that hurt others. And when that happens, we have to set boundaries to protect our family. Grandma Patricia made some choices that hurt our family, so she can't visit us right now." "Is she in timeout?" Emily asked, and despite everything, we all laughed. "Yes," Marcus said, pulling his daughter into a hug. "Grandma Patricia is in timeout." The Robert Blake Memorial Trust moved forward with surprising speed. Margaret had been brilliant in structuring it. The trust owned the property, with me as primary trustee and Olivia and Marcus as secondary trustees. The bylaws prohibited any trustee's family members from financial involvement in trust projects, effectively freezing out Patricia. We secured $1.6 million in combined financing through a government affordable housing grant and a construction loan. The architect I'd hired, a young woman named Rachel, who'd grown up in a single-parent household herself, designed 6 beautiful modular units that maximized space while maintaining the garden area and the original cottage. Each unit would be 2 bedrooms, perfect for a mother and child or 2 children. Rents were set at 30% below market rate, with preference given to women escaping domestic violence or rebuilding after divorce. The screening process partnered with local social services to ensure the women who needed help most would receive it. Construction began in August 2024. I visited the site almost daily, watching as the foundation was poured, the frames went up, and slowly, impossibly, hope took physical form. Olivia came with me often, bringing Emily. We'd stand at the edge of the construction site, hard hats on, and watch the workers. "Mum," Olivia said one afternoon, "I want to do something." "What's that?" "I want to create a program through the trust, free financial counseling for the women who live here. Basic budgeting, credit repair, saving strategies. Everything Marcus and I are learning the hard way, I want to teach them so they don't have to struggle like we did." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the cruel woman who'd handed me a funeral candle, but the girl who'd once wanted to save the world, one person at a time. "That's a beautiful idea," I said. "Let's make it happen." March 15th, 2025, dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect Wellington days where the wind held its breath and the harbor sparkled like scattered diamonds. The Robert Blake Memorial Housing Complex was complete, all 6 units standing proud with fresh paint, new landscaping, and a small community garden area where the old, overgrown lawn used to be. My cottage remained tucked in the corner of the property, freshly painted in the same cream color as the new units, a reminder of where this journey had started. We'd planned a modest opening ceremony, just the trustees, Margaret, our first 3 tenant families, and a few neighbors. I explicitly did not invite Patricia, though I'd heard through the grapevine that she'd been making inquiries, trying to find fault with our building permits or zoning compliance. She'd found nothing. We'd done everything by the book. What I didn't expect was the media attention. Rachel, our architect, had submitted the project to a national affordable housing competition, and we'd won 2nd place and a $15,000 prize. Suddenly we had reporters from the Dominion Post, Radio New Zealand, and even a television crew asking to cover the opening. "Mum, we're not ready for this," Olivia said nervously as we watched the TV van pull up. "Yes, we are," I countered, smoothing down my new dress, the first new clothing I'd bought myself in 3 years, a simple navy blue that Olivia had insisted I get for the occasion. "We built something good. Let people see it." The ceremony began at 2 o'clock. Mayor Andy Foster gave a short speech about innovative affordable housing solutions. Margaret spoke about the importance of social trusts. Then it was my turn. I stood at the small podium we'd set up, looking out at the assembled crowd of about 50 people, and felt my throat tighten with emotion. The black candle sat on a table beside me. I'd brought it intentionally, though I hadn't told anyone why. "My name is Susan Blake," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm 65 years old, and 10 months ago I received the most painful gift of my life." I picked up the black candle, holding it up so everyone could see. "My daughter gave me this funeral candle on my birthday and told me, 'It's what you deserve. I'll light it on the day of your funeral.'" Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw the reporters lean forward, cameras zooming in. Olivia, standing to the side, had gone pale. "I tell you this not to shame my daughter," I continued, "but to illustrate how broken our family had become, how pain and resentment, left unaddressed, can poison even the strongest bonds, how the weight of unspoken expectations can crush the people we love most." I set the candle down and gestured to the buildings around us. "This complex exists because of that candle, because in the aftermath of that terrible moment, we made a choice, not to destroy each other, but to build something meaningful from our pain. These 6 units will house single mothers who are fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, making their own impossible sacrifices." My voice cracked slightly. "My husband, Robert Blake, died when our daughter was 8. He left me with very little money and a whole lot of love. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought being a good mother meant martyring myself so completely that my daughter would never forget what I'd given up for her. I was wrong." I looked directly at Olivia. "Love shouldn't be a debt. Sacrifice shouldn't be a weapon. And motherhood shouldn't be a competition to see who can suffer most. These are the lessons this building represents. These are the truths we're offering to the women who live here. You deserve support without judgment, help without shame, and a fresh start without having to earn it through suffering." The crowd was absolutely silent. Even the reporters had stopped adjusting their equipment. The Robert Blake Memorial Housing Complex is named after my late husband, but it's dedicated to every mother who's ever felt like her sacrifices were invisible, every daughter who's ever felt crushed by impossible expectations, and every family who's ever had to claw their way back from the brink of destroying themselves. I paused, gathering my courage for the next part. I want to tell you all exactly how this project was funded, because transparency matters. The property was purchased in 1995 for $180,000 using life insurance money from my husband's death. Over 29 years, rental income from this property grew to $158,000, which funded my daughter's education and early life expenses. 2 years ago, I signed the property over to my daughter as a gift. 6 months before doing so, I took out a reverse mortgage for $200,000, which I placed in a trust for this project. We secured an additional $6 million through government grants and construction loans. Total project cost, $1.93 million. Current property value with improvements, approximately $2.8 million. I saw Marcus writing down numbers, his financial consultant brain unable to help itself. The 6 units will generate approximately $140,000 in annual rental income. After operational costs and loan payments, the net income of about $45,000 annually will be split as follows: 30% to maintenance and reserves, 30% to an education trust for my granddaughter Emily, and 40% to a housing crisis fund that will help other families access affordable housing. This means, I continued, that this project will be self-sustaining within 5 years, and within 15 years it will be completely debt-free and generating pure profit for charitable purposes. This is how we turn pain into purpose. This is how we transform a funeral candle into a foundation. I picked up the black candle again. I'm keeping this candle as a reminder, not of my daughter's cruelty, but of our family's capacity for change. And one day, many years from now, when I do pass from this world, I've asked Olivia to light this candle at my funeral, not as a symbol of death, but as a beacon of transformation. I looked at my daughter, who was crying openly now, and smiled, because the greatest gift we can give each other isn't perfection. It's the courage to fail, the humility to admit it, and the determination to build something better from the wreckage. The applause started slowly, then built to something thunderous. Olivia walked over to me, and I pulled her into my arms, the first real embrace we'd shared in years. "I love you, Mom," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I'm so proud. I love you so much." "I love you too, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight. "I always have. I just forgot to say it out loud." The television cameras captured it all, the tears, the embrace, the black candle sitting on the table beside us. That evening, the story would air on national news. The headlines would read, "Wellington woman turns birthday betrayal into housing hope," and "From funeral candle to foundation, a family's journey back." But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the weight of my daughter in my arms, the solid reality of the buildings around us, and the knowledge that sometimes the most devastating moments in our lives are actually doorways to something better. Patricia Henderson watched the news that evening from her expensive home in Kelburn. She called Marcus's phone 17 times. He blocked her number. October 22nd, 2025, exactly 1 year after the black candle incident, I woke in my cottage to the sound of children's laughter. Through my bedroom window, I could see Emily playing in the community garden with 2 other children from the complex, their mothers chatting nearby while they harvested vegetables. The morning sun cast long shadows across the property, illuminating the transformation that a single year had wrought. The Robert Blake Memorial Housing Complex was fully occupied and thriving. Our 6 units housed 7 women and 11 children. Each resident had a story that echoed my own in different ways. Maria, who'd fled domestic violence with 3 children. Jennifer, a young widow with twin toddlers. Amelia, going through a difficult divorce while supporting 2 school-aged daughters, and they were succeeding. Maria had gotten her social work degree and now worked at Women's Refuge. Jennifer had started a small catering business from the commercial kitchen we'd installed in the community building. Amelia's daughters were on the honor roll at their school. The weekly financial counseling sessions Olivia ran were always full, sometimes with women from outside the complex who'd heard about the program. Olivia herself was transformed. She'd lost the brittle, defensive edge she'd carried throughout her marriage to Marcus's expectations. She dressed more simply now, still neat and professional, but without the desperate status markers of designer labels. Her face had softened. She smiled more easily. And most importantly, she'd started saying no to things that didn't align with her values. Marcus had been promoted at work, his integrity and renewed focus impressing his superiors. With the raise, $170,000 a year now, and Olivia's part-time income of $35,000, plus careful budgeting, they'd managed to pay down $67,000 of their debt in 1 year. At this accelerated rate, they'd be debt-free in 6 years, not 25. They'd moved into a modest 3-bedroom house they'd purchased for $620,000, well below their means, but perfect for their needs. Emily had her own room, decorated with artwork from the children in the complex. They'd created a life built on substance rather than appearance, and I could see the relief in both their faces. Patricia had attempted reconciliation twice, once through a lawyer, demanding Marcus fulfill his filial obligations, and once by showing up at Emily's 4th birthday party uninvited. Marcus had stood firm both times. The final straw came when Patricia tried to file a legal challenge to the trust structure, claiming undue influence. The judge had dismissed it within 15 minutes, and Patricia had been ordered to pay our legal fees of $8,500. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Patricia's marriage was now struggling, her controlling behavior turning toward her husband after losing access to Marcus. Some part of me felt sad for her. She was a woman who'd confused control with love, money with worth, and appearance with substance. But I couldn't save her. She had to want to change, and she didn't. This morning, though, I wasn't thinking about Patricia. I was preparing for a celebration. A double celebration, actually. It was my 66th birthday, and it was also the 1-year anniversary of the complex's opening. I dressed carefully in a new outfit Olivia had helped me pick out. Comfortable but elegant, practical but beautiful. As I walked out of my cottage, I saw the community area transformed. Balloons, a long table laden with food, and a banner reading, "Happy Birthday, Susan," and "Happy Anniversary, RBM Complex." Tears sprang to my eyes. All the residents were there, along with Olivia, Marcus, Emily, Margaret, Rachel the architect, several neighbors, and even Mayor Foster. Dr. Williams, our family therapist, had come with her partner. The television reporter who'd covered our opening story was there too, working on a follow-up piece. "Surprise!" Emily shouted, running over to hug my legs. "Happy birthday, Grandma Susan." I scooped her up. She was getting so big now, almost too heavy to lift, and kissed her cheek. "Thank you, sweetheart. Did you help plan this?" "I made you a card," she said proudly. "Mummy says you like handmade things." "I love handmade things," I confirmed, setting her down and taking the card she thrust at me. It showed a stick figure labeled Grandma Susan holding hands with other stick figures in front of colorful houses. "Mummy says you turned a bad thing into a good thing," Emily had written in careful letters. "You're a hero." I couldn't speak for a moment, just held the card to my chest. Olivia appeared beside me, her own eyes misty. "She's not wrong, you know. You are a hero. My hero. Our hero," Marcus added, joining us with a small wrapped box. "Susan, we know you hate being fussed over, but we wanted to give you something meaningful." I opened the box to find a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a tiny house. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Look closer," Olivia said. I peered at the pendant and saw tiny words engraved around the edge. From darkness, light. From pain, purpose. From mother to daughter, always love. "We had it custom made," Marcus explained. "It's a reminder that this," he gestured to the complex, "came from love. Complicated, messy, imperfect love, but love nonetheless." Maria, one of our residents, stepped forward with her 3 children. "Susan, we wanted to do something too. All of us residents." She handed me a photo album. "We each wrote a page about what this place means to us, what you and your family's second chance means to our second chances." I sat down at one of the picnic tables and opened the album, reading through tears. Each page was a testament to resilience, gratitude, and hope. Maria wrote about how safe she felt for the first time in years. Jennifer wrote about finally being able to breathe without the weight of impossible rent crushing her. Amelia wrote about her daughters laughing again, free from the tension of their father's anger. "This is the most precious gift I've ever received," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, all of you." The celebration continued through the afternoon. We ate, we laughed, children played, and for a few perfect hours, the world felt exactly right. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the garden, Olivia approached me, holding something wrapped in dark cloth. "Mum," she said quietly, "I have one more gift, the most important one." She unwrapped the cloth to reveal the black candle. My breath caught. "Olivia, I've carried this for a year," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "I've looked at it every day, remembering what I did, who I was, who I never want to be again. And today, I want to do something with it." She called everyone to gather around. "Most of you know the story," she said, addressing the group. "A year ago, I gave my mother this candle as a birthday gift and told her it was what she deserved, that I'd light it at her funeral. It was the cruelest thing I've ever done, born from years of resentment, shame, and losing myself in other people's expectations." She held up the candle. "This candle represents the worst version of myself, but my mother, in her wisdom, kept it. She said that one day I would light it, not as a symbol of death, but of transformation." Olivia pulled out matches. "Today, I'm going to light this candle, but not for a funeral, for a rebirth, for the death of the cruel, petty woman I'd become, and the birth of the person I'm fighting every day to be." She lit the candle, and we all watched the flame catch and grow. In the fading sunlight, surrounded by the homes we'd built from pain, that small flame seemed to hold all the hope in the world. "To second chances," Olivia said, her voice clear and strong. "To mothers who love imperfectly, to daughters who fail and try again, to families who break and rebuild themselves stronger, and to my mother, Susan Blake, who taught me that the measure of a person isn't how far they fall, but whether they choose to rise." "To Susan!" everyone chorused, raising their glasses. I stood and embraced my daughter, the black candle burning between us, its dark symbolism transformed into light. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. "So very proud." As the evening drew to a close and guests began to leave, I found myself standing alone in the garden, looking at the complex. 6 families thriving where there had been only one isolated cottage. A community growing where there had been only loneliness. Hope flourishing where there had been only pain. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "By the way, Patricia called my office today. She wants to schedule a meeting. No lawyers, just her. She says she wants to understand what she did wrong. No guarantees, but thought you'd want to know." I smiled. Perhaps transformation wasn't reserved only for Olivia and me. Perhaps even Patricia might find her way back to her humanity. Time would tell. I walked back to my cottage, the silver house necklace warm against my chest, and thought about the journey from that terrible birthday to this beautiful one. From a funeral candle to a foundation. From a family fractured to a family healing. From a mother and daughter who'd forgotten how to love each other to 2 women rebuilding their bond with honesty, humility, and hope. The black candle still burned in the community area, its flame steady in the evening air. Tomorrow, we'd let it burn down completely, and then we'd plant a tree in the garden. An oak, strong and enduring, a living symbol of growth from darkness. But tonight, I simply sat in my cottage, surrounded by the sounds of my community, the love of my family, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that we'd taken something broken and made it beautiful. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. These stories of resilience, forgiveness, and second chances need to be shared. And I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories. Remember, it's never too late to transform pain into purpose, darkness into light, and broken relationships into something stronger than they were before. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.